Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence, silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community, including Mrs. Lois Conway, Mr. Tom Conway, Mr. Bobby Timlin, Ms. Sandy Peranic, and Ms. Maria Armonti. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl? Here. Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Dr. Rothchild here. Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Mr. King?
Here. Dispense with the reading of the minutes, please.
Third order, 3A, correspondence received from the Business Administration regarding budget transfers for various departments. 3B, correspondence received from Mayor Cognetti dated January 10, 2023, regarding NAOG slide removal. 3C, correspondence received from Business Administrator Lawrence West dated January 10, 2023, regarding Department of Public Works end-of-year 2022 overtime. 3D, Single Tax Office City Funds Distributed Comparison Reports 2021-2022 year-to-date December 31st, 2022. 3E, correspondence received January 12, 2023 from OECD regarding Code Enforcement Report for City Council. 3F, OpenGov Enforcement Report for the year 2022.
Are there any comments? Excuse me. Are there any comments on any of the third order items? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements this evening?
I have refuge garbage is a day behind this week because of the Martin Luther King holiday. And correspondence we received from Mayor Cognetti that we will have later. We printed some out. If anyone doesn't have internet access, they're on the table right there next to our Times Reporter if you want a copy of it. That's it.
All right, I have one other announcement. We did get a timeline of the new zoning ordinance from the law department last week, and just so everybody is aware, that the public is fully aware, the Planning Commission on the 26th, so January 26th at 6 p.m., they're going to be bringing that up, so it'll be the community's first opportunity in the new year to speak to the new zoning ordinance. So if any neighbors or residents have any comments on that, it would be a good time to air their concerns.
And during fifth order this evening, I'll give an overview of the updated timeline for the zoning ordinance. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have two quick ones. So last Friday, Chief Carroll presented Detective Michael Schultz, Patrol Officer Jill Foley, which is A shift, Patrol Officer Christopher Ganal, which is C shift, and Patrol Officer Kevin Sweeney, which is B shift, with awards of outstanding excellence. These members were chosen by their peers as the employees of their respected shift division that best exemplifies the role of the police officer and provides the best representation of the police department. So my applause goes out to them. And then secondly, I'd like to congratulate the Lady Invaders of West Scranton. They claimed both 7th and 8th grade championships at Martin Luther King tournament yesterday, so congratulations to them. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Fourth order.
Fourth order, citizen participation.
First name on the list, Joan Hodawanitz.
Joan Hodawanitz, Scranton. Item 5D, Greg and Joan Sunday once again making a $5,000 donation to the fire department in honor of their son, Stephen, who passed away, I believe in 2020 from COVID-19. Now, they've made more than one donation, sizable donation. So my recommendation to you, Mr. King, is next time you talk to the mayor or maybe chief judge, I think it would be appropriate in some way to memorialize their son Stephen and recognize their contribution, because this is far beyond what I've ever seen any family do for the city of Scranton. I think it would be very appropriate. It wouldn't cost any money. A proclamation. Name a major piece of equipment after him in his memory. Something of that, you know, but these are outstanding people. Speaking of the fire department, a week ago, several firefighters went down to Allentown to assist in a rescue of a man who was trapped when a trench collapsed. I saw coverage of it on WNEP TV, Channel 16. I didn't see anything in the newspaper. Jeff? At any rate, you hear a lot of times, you know, thank a veteran for their service. Well, I would remind the people of Scranton that our police and firefighters have equally dangerous jobs, and they should also be thanked. You know, a lot of people would never dream of going into those professions because of the risk that it entails. But I think that, you know, we should all recognize them and thank them for their service anytime we can. And continuing with the fire department, where do we stand with the labor contracts for the firefighters and the police?
I spoke to the mayor yesterday, and the fire department and police department are going to be going into arbitration. I believe the first arbitration hearings are going to happen probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, just keep in mind now, these people are serving without benefit of a contract. It's been over a year. And what is the status of the 2021 audit?
So the last email that we got, it said that the auditors are waiting on 2 documents. The 2 remaining items are the sewer authority audit and the actuary report for the post-retirement benefits.
Okay.
And they're saying once they get those documents, that they could complete the audit.
I hope the city seriously considers imposing that 10% fine for a late audit, because it was promised on September 30th, if you all recall. And which brings to mind, you know, the sewer authority. Hopefully that entity will go away this year. I understand that they're on a different fiscal year, which is one of the reasons why their audit comes in late. But something to think about, when you create an authority or a commission, you know, it's like a fire and forget missile, okay? You set it up, you appoint the members, and then they don't answer to you anymore. They don't answer to the voters. So you don't have much power over them. So hopefully, if you're going to set up a stormwater authority, this is something to keep in mind. It's the mayor that nominates these appointments, is it not?
Yes, it
So
is.
hopefully, we'll get adults in on both sides of the fence who will say, we're going to do what is right for the city of Scranton and not have any of these territorial contests. And by the way, you can finish the audit without, you know, the sewer authority's audit. You simply get an adverse opinion and you move on. And I hope you saw in the paper, county discovers unclaimed taxpayer money. The controller's office uncovers roughly $60,000. Now, it turns out that Reggie Mariani from the controller's office, he entered into the state treasury department looking for unclaimed property. Over 100 keywords, not just Lackawanna County, but general fund, district magistrate. That's how they came up with over $60,000. Quote, cursory searches for the city of Scranton, Dunmore, and Jessup boroughs in the Scranton School District showed unclaimed money. We would recommend that if people haven't checked with the unclaimed property, they do it. This is something else to discuss with the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hodowanitz. Lee Morgan.
Good evening, Council. Lee Morgan. The first thing I have here is, I hope that before anyone would run for public office, they'd go to the Manuka and talk to the former Mayor Connors, who was just an outstanding mayor and a public servant. And I think that as time has flowed through this city, we just have diminished ourselves to the point where I think people forget what they were elected for. But today I wanted to talk about the pool at Naog. And Mr. Smurl, you made a comment about the water slide, that it was inspected every year and it never had an issue. Those were your statements here from the minutes from the Rec Authority. Now, we're talking about building a pool in the city of Scranton. Thankfully, the old pool hasn't been removed yet, because there's ways to fix pools, okay? You pump cement underneath them and you block the hole. Now, it stops the pool from losing water, and I watch it done all the time on the natural gas sites where they bring a truck in and they pump the cement down underneath it and they stop the leak. Now, the Rec Authority questioned where the money was going to come from to build the pool. I've never heard of a city building a pool that's 3 foot deep in my life. And the bulk of what the mayor's talking about is building a splash park, which is just the most atrocious silliness that I've ever heard in my entire lifetime. But the big issue here is we don't have the money. So why are we filling pools in with dirt and pretending like we've got answers to some question? Because that's not really what's going on here. And what we've had in this city over an extended period of time is a big problem with, I feel, public graft, by the flow of grant money through the council flowing all over the place. Okay, now we got it moving through nonprofits, and we got all kinds of silliness going on. People need to go to the Southside Sports Complex, which the University of Scranton now owns, that was built with Section 70 money, where the federal government said that project could never be sold, never, and the city sold it. So now if the federal government comes back here and asks for their money back, then the residents have to pony up. We've just played so many games with the residents, and the mayor not coming here today and sending a memo. Well, look here's the mayor's statement. Okay, the mayor, the goal is to not take the debt for the pool. What debt? You're filing for grants. Okay, now we took the slide down. Instead of taking the slide down and disassembling it and putting it on the ground and building whatever project we were going to build, allegedly it was given to the contractor. Now, I mean, I've got that in paperwork. And you just have to question, how corrupt can our government be? I mean, Mr. King, that invitation for you on the 26th is still open. Okay, for ECTV at 5:30 on the 26th. I think you should come. I think you should bring your council with you. You know why? Because you're not talking to me. You're talking to the residents. And I think they have a right to know what's happened with this project, where the mayor is, how we proceeded to fill a pool and without money to build a pool. Even the Rec Authority is questioning, where is the money coming from? Now, there's opposition to a splash park. And all the people that are talking to me, and there's quite a few, they have no faith in this council. They think the city's nothing but corrupt from the top to the bottom. And they think that this council would never show its face out in light of public and have a discussion at a table. And the one thing that's really got them upset is they don't want a splash park. They want a pool. But you know something? All is not lost, because the pool is still there. And in these documents I don't have the study. Where's the study? You talk about the study that was done. I mean, there's just a host of things here that the public should be informed on. What has taken place at the Rec Authority? I'm going to ask the new Rec Authority members and the old ones in the future to come and sit on ECTV with me at a table and have a discussion. And Mr. King, I think you should really second think what you said last week, and you, as the president of council and the rest of the council, you should present yourself, not to me, but the residents of the city, because that's the real problem we have, credibility.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Bob Bolus. Evening, Council. Bob Wallace, Scranton. Just like to reiterate on what Lee just said. The dumbest thing that could ever happen in this city was the destruction of that pool. If anybody has any common sense from engineering, when you have a road settlement or a bridge settlement, they come out and they pump concrete down underneath it to raise it up where it's supposed to be. Those holes could have been plugged. Nobody was interested in saving the pool. It was the stupidity about how much they could gouge us in the city of Scranton out of our money. And contractors coming in, they don't want to repair it. They want to fill their damn pockets. Okay, I've been in the construction a long, long time. I deal with the gas wells and drilling. It was the dumbest thing the city could ever do to the people in this city to tell us senior citizens we're going to run around in a splash park. You ripped the sliding board down. You didn't use any common sense because it's all about dollars, who could get it. And that's the worst thing that could happen here. The other part, I went against, as you're well aware, of the Recreation Authority for the parking, Naog Park by Geisinger employees. The Recreation Authority settled for peanuts. You pay $2 an hour sitting in front of the hospital for a meter with a $2 limit. They settled for $500,000. We wanted $1 million minimum out of it. They don't care about lights. PP&L puts them in for free. Yet they turned around and they settled with Geisinger that's spending millions and millions of dollars. Look what they just did off Olive Street, $20-some million. Yet the stupidity there, and I sued them, it was before Judge Gibbons, and it's still an active lawsuit, and I'm going to take it right to the end till we get justification that that board, that the Recreation Authority at Naog gets disbanded, and it goes under City Recreation Authority, period. We don't need another authority with the incompetence that's up there. I'm not saying it behind anybody's back. You're fully aware, sir. I said it right to everybody's face, and I said it in the courtrooms. So what you're doing to this city, you sit on this panel, you don't represent yourselves, you represent the city of Scranton and its residents. And that's what's wrong here. And that's what's got to change. Now, if I may, I'd like to approach council. I have something to put out. If I may, Mr. King? Sure. Thank you.
Sure.
Here you are, Doc.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
I presented council, and it's not blindsiding Jessica in any way, shape, or form. I have nothing but the highest respect for her and her profession as a physical therapist. I go to them, but keeping in mind, if you can read it, it says, according to the American Physical Therapy Association, the appropriate designation is DPT. Should identify as a doctor of physical therapy to avoid confusion, as people who don't know your background will presume you're an MD or a DO who went to medical school and can diagnose and prescribe medication. I've already spoken to Jessica about it, and I'll address her as doctor. She's entitled to that, but the people are entitled to know that Jessica is physical therapist. Unfortunately, she can't prescribe medication or do anything. So it's like to the medical profession, and I have many, many friends, and so does she. She gets business from doctors who sign a prescription to go for physical therapy. I have asked Jessica if she would just put behind her name, and I'll pay for the new nameplate to identify her profession, which she should be damn well proud to say she is, because doctors and everybody else cannot do what she does, or physical therapists with aquatic therapy and everything else. And I've simply asked that out of respect to the medical profession, Jessica, and I will address you as doctor. I have no problem with it. I have a great deal of respect for you, and you know that from a long time ago. And I didn't come here to blindside her. I already discussed it. If you would take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles.
I don't know that, I'm not speaking for Dr. Rothchild, that she has any legal requirement to include DPT in her name. She's designated as a doctor of physical therapy. I believe that's why it's up there. Okay?
Les Spindler.
Good evening, Council. Les Spindler, city resident, homeowner. First off, as a lot of people know, last Sunday was a benefit for my daughter on West Side, and I'd like to thank everybody that showed up. Thank you so much for coming. Councilman Schuster and his wife came. Kathy Carrera came. Marie Schumacher. And we had a really good crowd, and I thank everybody. There's people that didn't come to make contributions, like Councilman McAndrew did. So anybody that came or didn't come, we thank you very much for your contribution. It was a big help. We had a really good time. It was a good turnout. And next month and a month after, there's going to be 2 wrestling events. They're going to benefit her also. So
Mr. Spindler, could you leave an address where a contribution could be made before you leave tonight?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. So she's got a lot of support behind her. She has a long road to recovery. Moving on. Last week, Mr. Smurl, you said about all the thousands of gallons we're losing from the big pool, and you said you shut it down. Did you shut it down, or did the rec authority vote on it?
No, it was an emergency thing. We called the mayor's office. We had court right at the time, and we all agreed to shut it down.
Okay, but it wasn't just you.
I'm sorry?
It wasn't just you.
No, I initiated
You said
it.
last week, to quote, you said, I shut the pool down.
Okay.
That's what you said. So I just want to clarify. The rec authority had to vote on it, correct?
There was an emergency when we found out how many gallons it was losing. So we had called the mayor's office. I had called the mayor's office and told him of it, and he said, shut it down. And therefore, I shut the water off to the pool, to that pool, and that was it.
Okay, thank you.
So I did shut it down.
Lastly, I was really disappointed to see in the paper last week that Boozy Bees is closing. I was a big proponent when they opened up. I've been there a couple times. I loved it. I hate to see any business leave the city, especially a small business like that. And, you know, they're doing good in Wilkes-Barre, I know that. I don't know what happened up here. Every time I went there, I loved it. I thought it was great. And, you know, anybody that loves ice cream and likes to have an alcoholic drink every once in a while, it was really good. I'm going to miss it, especially in the summer. The winter, I'm not a big ice cream guy, but you know, I miss it in the summer. And I wish them best of luck, and it's just sad to see that they're leaving. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time. And thanks again to everybody that contributed to the benefit of my daughter.
Thank you, Mr. Spindler. Jessica Osborne.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Osborne, and I live on Sanderson Avenue, and I just want to say that this is my 3rd time here. Different rounds of presidents this time, too, for residential parking at my street because of the new brewery that is there. They opened on Thursday. And like I had told you what was going to happen, happened. Everybody parked on the street. I come home from work, there's nowhere to park. He's also planning on having food trucks there. I don't know what you guys want to do with that. Are you going to help me out? You guys keep saying call the cops. I have called them in the past. They would drive by. They don't help out. I'm not going to be that person that keeps calling them and nagging them, and then they don't come anymore either. And I just don't understand. I know you guys keep saying the ordinance, you keep using it against me, but it also says, too, for between the business hours of Monday through Friday, where this guy is on Thursday to Sunday night. I don't know how you guys can do something with that, with the ordinance to help me out, because if you read that, that's what it says. And thus far, you guys have been holding that ordinance against me when I've asked you for this. I mean,
It's my understanding that we had to wait until that business opened up before the police could get down there and do, I don't know, what would it be, a traffic study?
Traffic and site study, yes, sir.
Yeah, to determine whether it qualifies for,
I understand. I was trying to do preventative measures. I already knew this was going to happen. I've lived there for 25 years at this intersection. I've already come here and I've told you about people going through the stop sign, police officers themselves, buses, everybody, you name it. I've seen it. It's going to happen like on Bernie Avenue. You guys knew that place was dangerous. So is this. It's going to happen. I've seen accidents happen like years ago when I lived there when I was younger. And now the people are going to be there drinking, parking more. It's not like it was with a garage when people left their cars there and they left it there overnight and whatnot. These people are coming and going now. It's different. You have prep that practices there. They're going to start coming again. It's busy there. It's a bus stop and everything else.
right.
And I don't have a driveway.
So unfortunately, it was reviewed by, I think, the prior officer that was in charge of doing those studies before the business opened. Now the business is open, which puts them in a position where they go back and reevaluate that.
And from my understanding from Frank, it's somebody else too, and I'm just curious, I've asked before, what are their qualifications that make them approved to do this? Because one of his responses says they just read the ordinance. I'm like, well, I could read the ordinance too. No offense.
I can't sit here and tell you that I know exactly what their process is that they utilize, but, I believe that they're qualified to be able to evaluate and do a proper evaluation as to whether, it's appropriate to qualify for, and you're looking for permit parking there, correct?
Yeah, residential I'm looking for, yeah. And I'm also asking with truck traffic too, we've discussed this back and forth, Frank and I just don't understand why they have to use my block of Sanderson where they can use Capous Avenue, which is wider widthwise for their trucks. They can go down Walnut Street and Poplar Street. If the DPW trucks can make those streets, so can they. You guys keep telling me they go down Albright. There's no reason for them to make that turn on Sanderson and Glen. I don't know if any of you guys have ever traveled that or driven that to appreciate any of this, but maybe if you went down there and check it out yourself, the width of that whole road from Sanderson is pretty tight. So if you've seen there with truck traffic, I don't think they should be on that block is what I'm saying. There's no reason why they can't go up to Capous and make those couple turns.
Yeah, we'll have the police check into that. I believe one of the issues is the reasons why those trucks have to come down there is they can't get through the
But if they
underpass.
go up one more block and they make a couple turns and they go down by where the National Bakery is and go down by Walnut or Poplar where Tops is and they go down there and they can go by DPW and get onto Albright where they're supposed to be, they can make those turns is what I'm trying to say. There's no reason for them to be on my block from 1500 to 1200 of Sanderson. There's no reason for them to be on that block for how small it is widthwise.
Okay,
Just me
we'll ask
looking
the
there, I
police
just
to
don't
take a look at
understand why
that.
they can't just go up and make a couple turns. It's dangerous. Now you're gonna have people coming in and out and drinking like that where that is in the corner there too. I live right there when you're making this turn. And my car almost gets hit all the time. I'm like, ooh, are they gonna make it? Let's see. It's like roulette.
Right. Okay, we'll ask the police to take a look at, are there other options for the trucks?
And do something with the stop signs and lighting there. It's terrible.
Okay.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jessica. There are no more names on the sign-in sheet. Does someone else like to address council?
Tom Coyne, Manuka. Been out for a little bit, so I'm not quite up to speed again, but looking in the paper, I noticed that from past discussions here, one of their people for council had talked about being punitively or adversely and punitively penalized by a licensed inspection officer. That they've come out and taken pictures of his next door neighbor and then wound up giving fines to the gentleman who's here and probably might speak on it tonight. It was interesting looking in the newspaper that the city made a settlement in 2001 for targeted enforcement of properties that were for a punitive measure by the License and Inspection Bureau. It's also interesting that it cost the city $285,000 for that settlement. That's an awful big amount of budget money for something that's punitive. Has that been addressed with the employees who go out and have taken these actions? I believe that at $285,000, that's quite a number of years of pay. If I had done that on a company and cost my company $285,000 and say I was making $60,000 a year, I could be sure I'd find the door almost instantly. I wouldn't be an employee there at that point. I would have been let go, because costing close to $300,000 because of punitive enforcement and setting up a possible pattern and practice for this to happen again is an issue that needs to be addressed. Recently, there's also been a question on right to knows, where some people have put in right to knows and come back with there's no information found, no information on file, there's no paperwork. I understand part of that issue because when I talked to Mr. King about the request for whether or not the recycling fees were going into a separate account, and he was told that he could not discuss it because it was under litigation, I had asked him how that documentation was handled, and he said that he had talked to the city solicitor, and the city solicitor gave him that information back verbally. Unfortunately, you can't do a right to know on a verbal question. You can't do a right to know on a discussion. You can't find someone's memory on paper documents. Anything that's requested that goes from one department to another in relation to questions from citizens needs to have a follow-up on paper, on email, to track the issue. Because we have a right to be able to go back and verify those conversations. And we can't verify a he said, she said. There is no proof, especially after, if Mr. King leaves this board or something should happen, there is no record for the citizens to go back on. And seeing as a number of right to know requests have come back with no documentation found, part of the reason no documentation is found is because it's all done verbally. Nothing is put on paperwork specifically to avoid a paper trail. For zoning, the pilots last year, let's touch on pilots. We had a very low pilot program last year. I believe 6 or 7 people actually donated pilot money for the entire year. That's pretty low. There was private donors who donated to the fire department and everything else in much greater quantities than our nonprofits. We need to look into that again, because people in the nonprofits are not kicking in their fair share. And I would like to thank whoever put these downstairs, because as for the trash pickups, because a number of people here have picked them up today, because as of yet I've received none in the mail. Nothing has gone out, and I had to come here to pick up something I should have had before the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coyne. Would anyone else like to speak?
Hi, Doris Kolesky, resident of Scranton. I really came today just to make an announcement, but I do have to say, something in favor of the rec rec board up at Naog Park after hearing that blasting of disbanding them and everything. For all the boards I've ever been on or served on, and I'm not on that rec board, this is the hardest working board that I have ever seen. This is an actual working board who devotes so much time and energy for the betterment of the park, which I could totally attest to since I've been going there for over 59 years, actually for like 70-some years. So I'm really hoping you don't take him seriously because he knows not what he's talking about. And they have open meetings on the first Thursday of every month to the public. You can hear where the money is going. You can hear what they're voting on. You can hear what they're planning, what they're purchasing. So there's nothing sneaky or undercover about that rec board. And the improvements that they have made are outstanding, and I just can't say enough about every member that's on them. Okay, so that's enough. And I've never been on it, so I'm not singing praises for me. All right, my announcement, and I hope it's not out of order because of where it's going to be held, but I'm with an organization called Moms Demand Action. It's for common sense gun laws. We are not anti-gun. We are common sense gun laws. And the February 1st, I could never read, that's why I hate when I have to read it, not just say it off the top of my head, but from February 1st to February 7th is National Gun Violence Survivors Week. And it's held then because more people are killed by guns in the United States than killed in our peer countries an entire year, calendar year, in the month of February. And Moms Demand Action of Lackawanna and Luzerne County, that's why I know it's not a city thing, it's more of a county thing, but we meet in the city, will be sponsoring a blood drive. And it's in Miller Keystone Blood Center in Pittston. And it's because it's just a blood drive where you can go to give blood. So if you know anybody interested in giving blood, you can go and sign up at giveapint.org. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doris. Would anyone else like to address the council?
Hello, I am Eli Rothchild once again from 2 Leslie Drive, and I know there have been plans for the renovation of the Robinson Park, and I was just wondering if you could let me know when those plans will commence.
I don't believe I have a date right now for
I don't have a
Robinson.
date, but I do have the list of parks that are going to be done this summer. I'll go
Okay,
with that.
during fifth order, Mr. Smurl will give an update on some of the parks that are going to be addressed this summer. I'll try to find out a date through the East Mountain Neighborhood Association for you as to when those meetings will begin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Marie Schumacher. I came tonight with the only recycling postcard that I had, which was last year's, and so I was very happy to see at the sign-in, and I took several from some of my neighbors who also have not received theirs yet. So who mailed it out? Did the city mailed it out, or?
I believe that it was contracted out, Tom.
There's a print shop that was used, and I think the error occurred with the print shop.
Oh, the printer did it.
Right, so they had made additional copies, and they're resending out additional copies, but I have some further questions about it that I'll mention in fifth order.
Okay.
There were obviously, and I found out that I got one from here, and my wife saw it in the back of my car, and she's like, oh, we didn't get one of these. I thought we did, but so I know that, you brought that to the attention last week, and trust me, it's being addressed, and they're getting mailed out, but we did ask to have them available here, especially for people this evening.
And I did hear that there was a high volume of calls that were coming into the city from the East Mountain neighborhood, so that might have been a section that was missed.
We're unloved, yes. The other thing I would like to talk about is well, first of all, I think we should put it in the code what time, when that should be mailed, or by the latest date that it should be in the mail. Whoever does it, it doesn't matter. And now, it was about, I don't know if it was last year or if it might have even been the year before, there was a young woman who came to this podium and said that she had been talking to a man who, and I might have it backwards, but you'll get it, it doesn't matter which way it went. But I believe it was, he offered to buy the paint if they would paint the side of that first building when you come across the Duffy Memorial Bridge toward Mulberry Street. It is, it's in bad shape. And whoever was president, I think it was still Bill Gaughan, said, oh, no need to worry about that. That's going to be demolished. Well, it still hasn't been. And do we have a stated policy for demolition, and how many are there? I would like to know how many people or how many properties are on the demolition list and how they're prioritized. And if that could be kept up so we could just look for it on...
Mr. Voldenberg, could you send something to the administration and see if we can get a list of properties that are on demolition list?
I will. I'll get that
And actually, maybe
tomorrow.
we could find out what the process is for
I'll get
that.
an update
Thank
on
you.
that.
Yeah, we do have a process on that. Sometimes things get held up legally, and that might take longer.
Yeah.
A property that might be on the demo list, and then it's taken off the demo list. I'm not sure that property's ever been on it. I know there was a condemnation at least for one of the apartments in the building, but not for the whole building itself.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, well, if we could find out, yeah,
So
there's a big difference
what I know
there,
of.
yeah.
Yep.
And drainage, we really need to start looking at stormwater and drainage, especially on East Mountain. The whole unit block of Seymour Avenue coming off 307 has been like about that thick of ice. And I called DPW, and I'm sure they went out and tried to do something, but it's melted down, but it's still in terrible shape. And it's all drainage coming down from Snook Street. So it would be nice to get that done. And then I would just like to say I was very happy to go to Les's daughter's fundraiser. She's not only a very pretty girl, but she also had a very beautiful sling. I've never seen one like that, but, where did she get it? It starts with an A. Yes, Amazon. But it was very pretty, as is she. So, thank you. And I'm looking forward to your, what Scranton's going to look like January 2024.
I'm
the fifth
prepared
order.
for fifth order. I have my list.
Okay, I've
Hopefully
been
it'll-
waiting all week. Okay, thank you.
Then I'm going to have to deliver on it during the year. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council?
Good evening. Dave Dobson, resident, taxpayer. Again, this week I pick up the paper, Scranton Times, and the Icebox complex has been sold to a tax-exempt hospital conglomerate. That's just wonderful, but what's going to happen with the taxes? We were before we even heard of the hill section being bought out at 38% tax exempt in this town. Now, I understand we might not be able to say no, but what can we say? It's year in and year out, we keep getting a larger tax bill because somebody is buying another tax-paying property. And irregardless of our pools and whatever, our educational system, I know that needs to be paid for. However, it can't just keep going on to the same people time and time again. My tax bill is larger than the principal on my house. And pretty soon it's going to shadow the interest on top of it. So it's something to think about. And once again, I have these articles from the Times editorials, amends state utility law to limit rates. Now, when our sewer system was sold, sewage treatment plant, we were supposed to have the bill spread out amongst many communities, and we're doing that for other people. But the State Consumer Commission, I think it was, banned it from us. And I have a little comment for Scranton Times. Don't just say certain entities, that's what I remember from the paper. Pretty clearly say what entities opposed spreading those rates out. They wanted to give a 4% decrease or something like that. And instead we got a massive increase. It's probably like 20, 30 bucks a month on our bill for 2 people. So it's really considerable, and I don't need to pay for Richie Rich's sewer plant in his McMansion somewhere. And that's all there is to it. And also, regarding sewer, once again, DeNaples with their reverse osmosis plan, they got to dump trash for 40 years or more than 40 years, 50 years it was. There's about 43 left or 44. And now they want to reverse osmosis and contaminate the Naog Gorge with their garbage water. Unregulated, unobserved. You'd have to have somebody testing that water every day of the week coming out of there. And once contamination gets loose, it's like, oh, oops, oh, we got a $10,000 fine. Oh my God. You know, some of these libertarians, their idea of freedom is the right to pollute. And that's all there is to it. They want to do whatever they want to do and externalize their responsibility for it. They don't want to pay. They can raise the rates up there. I don't care. It's out of state trash. Raise the rates. Charge people for what they're dumping up there from out of state or whatever. But I don't need to pay more for my sewer when they're allowed to pollute with impunity with their reverse osmosis. The money goes up to the dump, and I pay the bill and put up with the pollution. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Dobson. Would anyone else like to address council?
Yes, hello, council. Well, where is he tonight? The big mouth from the city. I thought you were going to interested enough to try to get them here. I've said it before, and I'll tell you again. When you mess with my pocketbook, it makes me irritable. Now I'm going to tell everybody. Foretold is forewarned. Mr. Sunday and Mr. Orlowski need to get second jobs to get a good lawyer, because I'm taking them to court along with the city. I've had enough. You people aren't coming after me no more because I'm coming after you. You can't imagine what I've gone through this past couple months with a bunch of incompetents allowed to take advantage of their position like Sunday. Said, give me one ticket for this and another ticket for this. Then he changes his mind. Is this the caliber of people that make this administration? Well, we'll see what happens, I guess. And how any intelligent human being can say a 5% increase in our school taxes is a good move. These directors need their head examined. They are so far away from the tune of this city, it's unbelievable. You can't imagine. I've had a dozen people complain that why couldn't we close 3 schools? The reason is we got a bunch of no English speaking, no tax paying people dictating to the school board. What good was it electing school boards if your voice doesn't mean nothing? I got a whole bunch of stuff I could talk to. I just don't need to get everybody mad at me, I guess. It's a shame what's going on in this city. You don't know until you get involved like I've been with different parts of this administration. I tell you, this city needs a good businessman to run it instead of a tourist as our mayor. Maybe if she interrupted her daily photo ops and talked to some people on the street and just know what people are going through, she might feel a little different. She's just consumed with developers downtown. They're a bunch of deadbeats you have to take to court to squeeze taxes out of them. And right now, while we're sitting here, there's people out there watching that'll be frozen out of their houses in a year or two. You know it, they know it, I've heard remarks about it. It's just, home ownership has just gotten impossible for so many people. I've talked to people that got property they can't rent because all these developers are getting loans and grants and loan forgiveness, and everything, tax abatements, everything they can to help them, but nothing to help people that own property and can't rent it no more because who wants to pay the same amount of rent when you can go to a new place? Then, when somebody leaves a good property, you end up with a slumlord like that garbage that owns the house next door to me. Tonight, it looked like a used car lot with 2 cars parked on the lawn. This city is just full of illegal boarding houses. I walked my dog before down Parker Street, 57. I know the people. I know who lives there. 57 East Parker's an illegal boarding house. They got cars on the sidewalk, 2 cars in the yard, every house around there, but that one is the epitome of care. But see, there's nobody from the city does anything to stop this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ullman. Mr. Voldenberg, if we could have, contact someone to take a look at that property.
I did. I made note of it, sir.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to address council?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Are there any council members that have any motions? What's that? Okay. Mr. Smurl?
Yes. This last week, I've spent a few hours with Eileen Cipriani discussing the ARPA money, the stormwater funding, and upcoming park improvements. One thing I want to discuss is the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act money. That money also comes along with 437 pages, plus supplements and guides and documents on where and how the money can be spent. So to get deeper into that, I tried to find out, why we couldn't put it into parks, especially Naog Park. But Naog Park, the location of Naog Park, makes it so that none of this money can be used in that park at all. I don't know why a public park, and it's due to its location because of an upper income neighborhood. A park that big, I believe, serves the entire community, not just that neighborhood. But that's the rules that we have to live by. So $65 billion and not a dollar for NAOG. Funding for the current park improvements is already in place. The Connors Park, Nova Brino Park, and the North Scranton Mini Park are in final design, and they should start late spring. There's also on the website for the city, you can look up and see what improvements there's going to be at those parks. Weston and Connell Parks, the engineer, they're doing the design and the environmental reviews now. So those two are moving along. Robinson, Oakmont, and Capouse, the environmental and the surveying are underway right now for those parks. The last one, Naog Butterfly Park, they have selected an engineer, and they're just waiting now, I believe, is for the contracting to be put out to start Naog Park at the Butterfly Park. Then the city said they hope to have Weston, Connell, Robinson, Oakmont, and Capouse Avenue started this year, and most of that depends on the supply chain. Evidently, like everything else, you order playground equipment, and they say, we'll ship it next year. So we have a lot of stuff ordered, I believe, right now, but everything depends on the supply of all of this other stuff. And that's it. I thank you to Eileen Cipriani for giving me a couple hours of her time and answering all my questions. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Smurl. Mr. Schuster?
I guess just two things. I was happy to some of the residents in the Hill section with me and myself and Mr. Smurl went up last night, and we got to have a discussion on some of the zoning ordinance that's coming out. So thank you to that group there. And just, two people from our area, Jason Kavulich and Chris Paris, were just nominated by the governor for state-level positions, so congratulations to them.
Thank you, Mr. Schuster. Dr. Rothchild?
Yes, I have a few different comments and requests tonight. The first of which, I had met with Ms. Cipriani recently as well. We have a standing monthly meeting, and in my conversations with her, I requested some more information, and I believe she was going to send me or get code enforcement to send me a list of properties that have had fires in the past, because I know we all know a lot of these properties and where they are, that they've had a fire, and it's been some time, maybe a year, 2 years, and nothing's been done with the property. So then you're left wondering if it's if they're going to be using insurance money to renovate the property, if it's going to be demolished, what's happening with them. So I've requested that list so that I have a better understanding of what properties are out there still that and what their status is for properties that have had a fire in the past. And I wanted to bring up about garbage. I've noticed lately a lot of garbage being out very far in advance of when garbage is going to be taken. Now, we have had some days, a lot of holidays lately, where garbage is going to be a day late, so that's understandable if people put it out on the wrong day or early because of that. But this is garbage that's being, put out on the weekend when pickup isn't until Wednesday or Thursday. And so this, could cause litter. Animals could get into the garbage. It just adds to blight in the neighborhoods when you see garbage bags. Usually they're not even in cans, just garbage bags or items laying out for weeks on end. So I just wanted to remind the public that it's 24 hours in advance of garbage pickup when you could put garbage out at the curb. Make sure they are in trash cans that are closed in, and just be respectful of your neighbors. And I'm hoping that we could get code enforcement out to more of these properties to give them a door tag to remind them the proper schedule. And then on the topic of garbage, I know recycling was brought up with the schedules, and I had mentioned that we received an update on the issue being with the print shops and that they were being reprinted, and we have copies here at City Hall for residents who want to come to pick it up here, but they should have been mailed out to properties where it's missed. I had heard from that Green Ridge also was one of those neighborhoods that didn't seem to receive the recycling schedules. So I would like to know, and I asked Mr. Voldenberg earlier to reach out to our recycling coordinator to find out when around the time that people could expect to receive the schedules, the ones that have not already. And I'm also wondering if we had to pay anything additionally for these reprints, because it sounds like it's not to the fault of the city, but perhaps this print shop, and I want to make sure that we're not paying for errors that were not our own. And I had a complaint regarding Bloom Avenue because the garbage trucks were having a difficult time getting down the street to pick up garbage with some parking issues, some vehicles that were parked, and it's a narrow street, and they weren't able to get through. And I know that we had already sent this forward previously, but I'm asking that we resend it. I want to request for a traffic study to be completed on Bloom Avenue to determine if we need no parking signs so that vehicles are not blocking the way for the garbage trucks to get through.
I'll do that.
Great. And lastly, I just wanted to address something really quickly. I know that this has been addressed in the past, but I am a physical therapist. I've stated multiple times on the record that's my profession. I don't pretend to be an MD or DO, but my credentials of PT, DPT, which is what comes after my name when I'm signing medical documentation for my patients, or if I'm engaging in professional activities as it relates to physical therapy. There are some documents, I believe some things here that we have those credentials on, but it's really not something that's required. Plenty of people do have doctor in front of their names. It's a formal title, just like Mr., Mrs., Miss, and that just happens to be my formal title because of a degree that I hold. Doctorate could be in many different things. So I don't find it necessary to put it next to my name. Also, the nameplate, the size is limited, and actually, Mrs. Reed, when she was our clerk still, she said that it didn't seem like there was going to be enough room to fit my full name. I felt Jess was too informal to have on there, and she was the one who offered to put doctor. I know I don't need to provide that explanation, but if that's what is being looked for, then I'm happy to provide that, and I'm sorry to take up your time with that. That's all that I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rothchild. Mr. McAndrew?
Yeah, I seek a few updates. So before the holiday break, we had some issues over at Western Field with lifeguards. We were told at that point that the interviews were being, they were having interviews. So Mr. Voldenberg, could you reach out to Director Duffy and see where we're at with that?
I will, sir.
And then last week I inquired about the pocket park. A couple of people are still asking me over on Washington Avenue. Did we hear anything? Any update from them?
No response from Scranton tomorrow as of
I got
today.
an update from the mayor that a contract was signed this week, and I believe that Scranton tomorrow actually is involved or in charge of that project, and they're hoping to see it get started this spring.
Okay, and then also before the holiday, I inquired about Pond Avenue with a no U-turn onto Main Avenue. Was there a study done? Anybody take a look at it? Did we hear?
On that, Mr. McAndrew last week.
Okay, thank you. What else? Oh, also, and I agree wholeheartily with Mrs. Hodowanis, we should memorialize in some way the Sunday family for their generous, very generous and great generosity regarding their son. So could you please, Mr. Voldenberg, send something over the chief? If he wants to make a phone call, I can reach out to him, but I really think we should do something.
I will, sir.
And that is all I have. Thank you.
Councilman King, I'm sorry, there is one thing that I left off. Do you mind if I speak to that real quick? Just because Councilman Smurl had actually reminded me of this. So what will be coming, I don't think it's on the website just yet. I don't have a date for it, but it should be up shortly. They're working on an ARPA fund performance tracker for the city. So anyone will be able to access this through the website, and it's really neat how it's set up. So there will be different sections and graphs for what's budgeted for ARPA, what money is already obligated or spent, and where these projects lie. So that will be a really great way for residents to be able to track the ARPA spending. So I'm excited about that. Once that's up, you'll be able to see. It'll be a pretty useful tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rothchild. I have a lot, so I'm going to try to move this along as quickly as I can. Along with Secretary of Aging, Jason Kavulich, who's a West Scranton graduate, I want to congratulate him. Also, State Police Commissioner Chris Paris, a Scranton Prep graduate. We want to congratulate State Rep Mike Carroll, who will be the Secretary of Transportation. I know he's a Luzerne County guy, but it's nice that we have some local people that are going to be serving in, some high positions in Harrisburg. So I think that's a great thing. I know that Mr. Morgan mentioned Naog Pool, and he mentioned about the wading pool, why we would think that's a good idea. Well, we don't think it's a good idea. I think we all publicly stated that Mr. Smurl was not on the council that evening, but when that was presented by the mayor, she presented 3 options, and she asked which one we liked the best, and I said, quite frankly, I don't like any of them. I think we've been on record as saying we don't want a wading pool and necessarily a splash pad. We want a swimming pool at Naog, and I'm not going to speak again on behalf of my colleagues here, but I will tell you that that's what I would like to see at Naog Pool, ultimately. So I just felt that was important to say that. I also want to thank Mr. Bolus for sponsoring his annual Christmas dinner over the Christmas holiday for those who are less fortunate and really don't have a place to go on Christmas. So I have to applaud him for doing that on an annual basis and really helping a lot of people out at a difficult, it should be a real happy time for most, but for a lot of people it's a depressing time. So I want to thank him for his many years of contributions with that annual Christmas dinner. Mrs. Schumacher had mentioned to me about some goals I'd like to accomplish over this next year. So I put together, I didn't want to just spout off. I knew I had a lot of things in my head at the time, but I wanted to make sure that I put together a list for you so that, and as I read these, this isn't just a goal of mine. I'm hoping to accomplish these goals in collaboration with my fellow council members along with the city administration. So number 1 is to work with the administration to identify and pave as many city streets as possible this summer. Want to ensure that the East Mountain Stormwater Study gets completed, encourage city administration to apply for as many infrastructure funds that are available to help remediate the stormwater issues that are happening on East Mountain. I want to work with city administration, DPW, to continue replacing old and faded and missing street signs throughout the city. I want to bring the zoning ordinance to a hearing and ultimately a final vote by the spring of 2023, and I'm going to revise that zoning timeline shortly. There are changes from what the information we gave last week. Want to make it a priority to work with city administration to update the city website on a weekly or at least bi-weekly basis, because as pointed out by Mrs. Hodawanitz and others, I think that's important, and I expressed that to our mayor when I met with her yesterday, and they know it's a priority of councils, and we all think it's important that in terms of transparency and getting contracts, audits, everything should be updated and available for the citizens. As Councilman McAndrew mentioned, I want to push the city administration to properly plan for summer swimming at city pools by ensuring that enough lifeguards are hired in a timely fashion, and by ensuring that all pool maintenance requirements are addressed prior to the summer swim season, so we're not experiencing pools being down. I know things happen, you know, emergencies occur, but really I think proper planning prevents poor performance, and hopefully things can be addressed prior to the swim season for our citizens. Encourage city administration to expedite and make it a top priority to complete the Naog Park master plan so that we can begin the actual work in 2024. That may be a little ambitious, but it's not quick enough for me. I would really like to see that happen. Encourage city administration to continue upgrades at our city parks throughout the city, and I believe that Councilman Smurl addressed many of those things are about to happen this spring and summer. Work with the ECTV to improve the acoustic issues occurring here in city council chambers and also in the governor's office if possible, and we're going to work with them to see if there's additional funding or whatever we need to do, because you know all of you deserve to be able to hear what is happening during these meetings. And I don't sit out there, but from what I understand, it's very difficult to hear from back in the audience area, so hopefully we can get that addressed. It's been a while. Push the administration to get the work started and completed on the Pocket Park, as Mr. McAndrew had just indicated, located on the corner of Linden Street and Wyoming Avenue. And I will be making a call to Leslie Collins, the president or CEO of Scranton, tomorrow to see what needs to be done to get that project rolling. Work with city administration to ensure that the walkability study continues to be a priority, and ultimately review the recommendations to determine what makes the most sense for the future of downtown Scranton in terms of that walkability study. Work with city administration and the Scranton School District to identify nonprofits throughout the city and actively seek additional payments in lieu of taxes pilots to improve both city and school district contributions. Work with the administration to get the Regional Stormwater Authority up and running. Reorganize our Shared Services Committee and re-engage with the Scranton School District to focus on delinquent tax properties, assessment appeals, HUP tests, which, by the way, I did not know what HUP test meant. I found out it actually goes back to, it was hospital utilization project versus the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And it has to do with determining whether a certain nonprofit buildings that were originally identified as nonprofits continue to serve their intended use, that they initially qualified as tax exempt. So they may have been tax exempt 10 years ago, but maybe what's happening there now is not tax exempt. So that's the HUP test, and I would really like to see a focus on that. Work with the administration and council solicitor to review and update the administrative code, and work with the administration to ensure that the new rental registration inspection program is instituted. I think that's very important. And you know, Mr. Dobson mentioned something to me at the end of the meeting last week, and I put a call into our former city council president and now state rep Kyle Donahue. If you listen to Mr. Dobson, typically every week he mentions 38% of our city is non-taxable. They're nonprofits. And we talked about, you know, typically, and I knew this as the former school superintendent of Scranton School District, most urban cities, most like Scranton, Reading, Wilkes-Barre, Harrisburg, all of your urban centers have typically the highest need, okay, the highest needs and services needed, yet they have the least ability to raise the taxes because most have an eroding tax base and most have the largest percentage of non-taxable properties. So I talked to State Rep Kyle Donahue about whether we can push some legislation that cities like Scranton and York and Harrisburg and Easton and wherever that have an excessive amount of tax-exempt properties, if there could be some type of state legislation that the state would somehow reimburse those cities for the lost tax revenue. I'm sure that it would be very complicated, and there would be all kinds of formulas that would have to be applied. But he told me that there was already some initial legislation on the books that was being worked on. So I thank Mr. Dobson for bringing that to the forefront, and I hope to continue to work with Mr. Donahue and other legislators to try to improve our financial situation here in the city. So that's my list. It's not, that's not the end of it, but those are some of the highlights, some of the things we'd like to see happen this year. In terms of the proposed zoning ordinance timeline, so last week I mentioned that we're planning to reintroduce the zoning ordinance on January 31st. That's still accurate. We want to have a second reading on February 7th. And that evening, we would table it until we had a public hearing on March 21st at 5:45 p.m. here in the council chambers. Initially, I said we were going to vote on it that night. That's not correct. We'll vote a week later. Now, could these dates change? The only way would be like if the Planning Commission had to make some adjustments in there. It could move it back a week or two, but right now we're looking at January 31st, February 7th. It'll be tabled. There'll be a public hearing March 21st, and then the following week there would be a vote on that zoning hearing. Just to address, I have some notes from last week. Mrs. Hodawanit's DPW collective bargaining agreement. We submitted to the IT by council office and received by IT, yet await approval to post on the website for the city HR department. IT and HR will confirm an IT director to advise when it will be placed on there. That's the DPW collective bargaining agreement. I mentioned the audit earlier. I'm hoping mid-February that will be wrapped up. Mrs. Schumacher requested DPW traffic maintenance for replacement of, and I believe that was Eli as well, about the Leslie Drive sign and a permanent metal pole. At the best placement for driver visibility at that intersection of, it would be Leslie Drive and 307, which is very dangerous. DPW to advise as the sign department machine is down temporarily, but that they're aware of it and it's a priority. I just addressed acoustics. As far as acoustics, the chamber's upgrade will be given priority to the back room, boardroom unit prior to speakers due to the age of the board and consequences. Time-related issues include the RFP process that followed by supply chain availability. Mark Migliori with DCTV advised suppliers continue to give priority to larger customers even as supply chain issues lessen. The RFP process followed by securing equipment via vendors may take approximately 1 to 1.5 years. I'm hoping that that's not necessarily the case, but I'm reading the notes based on the information that we got on that. I will double check to see that hopefully that's not the issue, but being involved in construction, I do know that lead times for things like windows, for chillers, for rooftop AC units and things, they're up to 30 weeks in many cases. So it is a challenge right now. So we received something from the Davis Street resident, Jenny Davis and Mark Powell. Apparently, do not enter signs removed the intersection of Davis Street and May Street. It's a one-way street that borders their property. DPW was asked to replace the signage or advise council why it was removed and the reason they have not been replaced. The speeding on Davis Street, Scranton Police Chief was notified with a request to increase patrols and enforcement on Davis Street. Signage and road markings on Davis Street. Mark Kaufman, PennDOT, is to work with DPW regarding additional signage and road markings to increase safety on Davis Street. And they mentioned a loose manhole cover and deteriorated casing. Pennsylvania American Water Company was notified, visited, and advised that this repair is on the work list, as this would involve a team in traffic control due to high volume traffic at all times on those roads. So those are some follow-ups. Looks like I have a few more here. Let me just received from Sanderson Avenue resident Jessica Osborne. So Scranton Police Department traffic officer Corporal Rich Iannuzzo is to conduct a site traffic study for permit parking requests at the 1300 block of Sanderson Avenue due to an opening of a brewery business at the 1400 of Sanderson Avenue. City engineers Riley Associates conducted a traffic site study related to heavy truck traffic on Sanderson and Albright Avenues near the Lace Project, Keystone Building Block, and other businesses in the area. The city engineer found the following. They determined that any trucks traveling north to North Main Avenue by way of Greenridge Street must take Albright Avenue, and any truck traffic moving east on Greenridge Street toward Dunmore must use Sanderson Avenue due to the low height of the Greenridge Street viaduct. The truck traffic cannot be rerouted. However, Scranton Police can monitor and issue violations for any trucks causing reported damages to curbs or signs. Kathy Wexler, STO, provided update on city SSD real estate tax collections. Was that discussed earlier, or is that in third order?
No, that was just received yesterday.
Just yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. So below is the fourth quarter end of year information regarding the numbers and percentages of tax payments made for the city and the school district real estate tax. Paid in full, 21,855 accounts. That's 85.51%. Paid at least one installment but did not pay all 4 payments. These accounts will be sent to tax claim. 263 accounts, which equals 1.02%. No payments made. These accounts will be sent to tax claim. 3,630, which equals 14.20%. We'll continue to send these quarterly reports in 2003. Since the mayor's memorandum concerning the pool and the NAOG slide is in third order, I'm not going to sit here and read 2.5 pages of that memo. I'll spare all of you. There are copies here if you don't have the internet. But I think that I covered quite a bit there tonight, so that's all I have.
5B for introduction, an ordinance amending file of the council number 105, 2021, an ordinance amending file of the council number 72, 2019, an ordinance amending file of the council number 64 of 2014, entitled an ordinance adopting the quality of life and violations ticket process in the city of Scranton as amended to amend violations in section 2, enforcement in section 4, fines and penalties in section 5, fines and penalties in section 6, and citation fines in section 7, amending section 3 and section 4 violation numbers to coordinate with the notice of violation that is given out by code enforcement.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5C for introduction, an ordinance extending the discount period for real estate taxes and refuse fees.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. So moved.
5D for introduction, a resolution accepting a donation presented to the City of Scranton Fire Department from Greg L. Sunday and Joan M. Sunday in the amount of $5,000 in memory of Scranton firefighter Stephen Sunday to purchase equipment.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
Second.
On the question, I will say that I know Greg Sunday very well. I know his wife Jody, and I knew Stephen Sunday probably from the time he was in elementary school. He was an outstanding young man. He was a tremendous baseball player. I believe that he was an EMT for a short period of time before he became a Scranton firefighter. They're a wonderful family, and I agree with that recommendation that was made, that somehow they should be recognized. This is at least, I'm going to say minimally $10,000, but it may even be more than that that's been donated to the fire department in memory of Stephen. And even though he served a short time in that fire department, he made a massive impact in the short period of time he was there. So I want to thank the Sunday family for their contributions, and hopefully we can do something to memorialize this.
On the question, I'm also in agreement with memorializing Mr. Sunday in some way. I think that it's incredibly generous, the donations that the Sundays have made to the fire department, and it's truly appreciated. That's all. Thank you.
On the question, I also know the Sunday family. This is a wonderful thing that we continue to do. Like I stated in fifth order, we need to recognize.
All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5E for introduction, a resolution, reappointment of William Lesniak, 314 Piston Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, as a member of the Historical Architecture Review Board. William Lesniak's term on the Historical Architectural Review Board expired on October 11th, 2022, and was held over. His new 5-year term is effective upon execution of the resolution and is set to expire on October 11th, 2027.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5E be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved. Second.
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5F for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials for the city of Scranton to execute and enter into a contract with Frontline Mobile Health to provide National Fire Protection Association 1582 medical exam services for the Scranton Fire Department.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5F be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved. Second.
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5G for introduction, a resolution, amending resolution number 46, 2022, entitled amending number 175, 2021, authorizing, empowering, and directing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to appoint liaisons between the city of Scranton and Berkheimer, the duly appointed collector of earned income tax for the Lackawanna County Tax Collection District, for the express purpose of sharing confidential tax information with the district for official purposes, to update City of Scranton representatives authorized to receive confidential tax information, to remove proper names, and allow for the City of Scranton treasurer to be authorized to receive confidential tax information.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5G be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5H for introduction, a resolution ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to the Department of Community and Economic Development for the COVID-19 ARPA-PA small water and sewer grants submitted prior to the deadline of December 17th, 2022, in the amount of $424,488 to be used towards various stormwater projects.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5H be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question.
On the question, it's been quite some time since I asked this question, but Mr. Voldenberg, can we reach out to Eileen Cipriani and ask for, since it's the start of the new year, can we get all of the grant applications that have been submitted? So all of them that have been submitted for the year of 2022, and with the determination of what has been awarded, what has been declined, what is still pending, and then the grant applications that have been put out for the start of 2023.
I will, sir.
Thank you.
All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5I for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a contract with Herbert, Rowland, and Grubik, Inc. to perform Regional Stormwater Authority implementation consulting services.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5I be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second?
On the question. All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
Sixth order, 6A, reading by title, file the council number 47, 2023, an ordinance establishing compensation to be paid to the position of controller beginning in 2024.
You've heard reading by title of item 6A. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that item 6A pass reading by title.
Second?
On the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, file the council number 45, 2023, making minor amendments to file of council number 37 of 2022 regarding gaming machine licenses and peddler licenses.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B, for consideration by the Committee on Public Safety for adoption, resolution number 184, 2023, ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application to the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency for the local law enforcement grant program for funds up to $304,000 to be used towards the technology and information technology improvements and the non-reoccurring personnel costs for sworn officers.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety?
As chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second.
On the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Smurl?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
Eighth order, 8A, resolution number 176, 2023.
This piece of legislation is a liquor license transfer. It has been tabled until a public hearing was held this evening. Will be placed in seventh order on next week's agenda for final vote.
8B, file the council number 46, 2023.
This piece of legislation is for permit parking on the 1500 block of Pine Street. It has been tabled until a public hearing can be held on January 24th, 2023 at 5:45 p.m. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting's adjourned.